Hey, what's going on, guys? Appreciate you stopping by. It's been a little bit since I've talked about fuel, petroleum supply globally, the SPR, Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and I thought I would try to give a little update, at least my perspective on things. And I've been doing some reading, some research, because I wanted to better understand what is, at least to me, a pretty complex situation with a lot of moving parts, and there's been a lot of predictions. Some have come true, some have come partially true, and so I want to talk a little bit about where we're at and where we might go from here. And the first thing has to do with diesel and the cost of diesel fuel. Most people think about gasoline when they think about fuel, because that's what most people drive. And you pull up to the gas station, you look up at the sign. If your vehicle can take the cheapest gas, you look for the lowest price, and that's where I'm going to go. But the reality is that diesel is averaging $5.65 a gallon, and gasoline is $4.09 a gallon. That's pretty current data. And on July 6th, less than 2 months ago, diesel was $4.58 a gallon. And gasoline was about where it is right now, which is around, 4 to 409. So diesel has spiked, has jumped up more than $1 a gallon in less than 2 months. And gasoline didn't do that. So why is diesel climbing so much faster than gasoline? And why should you care? Because a lot of people, it's like, well, I put gas in my car. I'm not paying for diesel. Well, the reality is you are paying for diesel, because everything that you buy at the store is pretty much shipped and transported via diesel fuel. So when those shipping prices increase and fuel prices increase, then manufacturers, suppliers, distributors, assemblers, farms, everybody passes that cost on to the consumer. And that's me and you. And there's something called the diesel crack spread. And this is something that really caught my attention. On August 17th, the U.S. diesel crack spread reached more than $102 per barrel. And that's an all-time high. And if you've never heard of the term crack spread, and I never had, it's actually pretty simple. You have crude oil on one side, and then you have the finished fuel made from the crude on the other side. The crack spread measures the difference between the value in them. So when that difference becomes really large, the market is telling us that the finished fuel, that processed refined fuel, is in very high demand compared to the crude oil used to make it. And diesel went up above $100 a barrel. And the market's not, the market and the demand from consumers isn't just saying we need more oil. It's saying we need more diesel. And this is global. It's not just the United States. So, we've got American refineries that are working hard to produce fuel. And, the profit for producing diesel right now is really high, but the supplies are really tight. And, earlier this month, U.S. inventories, which include diesel and heating oil, fell to around 107 million barrels in total. And that's a very low level. And at the same time, the rest of the world, needs fuel. Middle Eastern supplies have been disrupted. We have situations with the Russia and Ukraine war, where Ukraine has hit numerous Russian refineries, and Russia actually stopped exporting diesel. So, countries are looking elsewhere for diesel, and one of the places is the United States. And during the second quarter of this year, the United States exported about 1.56 million barrels of fuel every day, and that's about 30% above the 5-year average. So, we're producing a lot of fuel, but we're also helping supply a world that needs it. And if you're saying what I'm thinking, we should keep some of that here, I can't say that I disagree with that. I don't know exactly what the impact of that would be, because again, we import so much that if we cause fuel prices to skyrocket overseas, we might end up paying for it anyways. Again, that goes beyond me. I'm just some guy sitting in his truck recording a video for you guys. So, but it seems to me that we should be taking care of ourselves. So, if you look at, why isn't gasoline jumping up in price? There were a lot of predictions that was going to happen. And the main reason, gasoline certainly is not cheap, but gasoline and diesel have different supply problems. I mean, diesel is used throughout the economy. I mentioned some of that already. Trucking, farming, construction, heavy equipment, railroads, shipping. And then in some places, like in Maine, diesel and very similar fuels to diesel are also used for heating and electricity. And we're also moving into a time of the year for agriculture. I mean, think about, like right now, my garden is starting to go by. And, we've already pulled up some of the plants. We got some stuff that's still producing, and then a second round of crops that we planted that's starting to come in, and they look pretty good. That's another video. But there's farms, small farms, big commercial farms all across the country that are harvesting their crops, and then those crops have to get transported, and they use diesel. They also use diesel in all the farm equipment. So, and the farmers can't simply stop harvesting because diesel is expensive. The crops have got to come in, the equipment's got to run, and that means, they got to buy the diesel. And, I kind of touched on this before, but it's just really important to keep in mind. You might say, I don't drive a diesel vehicle, and, so why should I care? And like I said, because you're still paying for that diesel. You may not see it directly, but the food at the grocery store, I already mentioned about the farmers, of the food that you're buying, trucks that transport anything. I mean, all of these entities use diesel. I mean, think about transportation of lumber, the harvesting of the trees, appliances that are getting moved, clothing, automobile parts. You are going to get those to the stores via diesel. And it's also packages that are delivered to your house. Everything that we buy spends some time on a truck, and that truck takes diesel. So that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of ringing an alarm bell, and so many other channels and experts out there, is that it's a huge economic warning sign that if diesel stays this expensive, or it goes higher, because it absolutely could, we could eventually see that showing up in inflation. I mean, I say eventually. We're seeing it now. But there is a time lapse where the price goes up and then prices are adjusted. And with this digital pricing that's going on so much now, it absolutely could happen in real time. So, we got the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. I'm just going to touch on this real quick because this is going longer than I expected. But, last week it was right at 290 million. It was 289 million and some odd change of barrels of oil. And, it's much lower. It's the lowest point that it's been since it was filled back in like 1983. And, it doesn't store diesel, it stores crude oil. And that SPR has been used to help supplement the global oil supply because of the interruption of the Strait of Hormuz and because of, what's going on in the Middle East. And, there's a ton of controversy about how much more can get pulled out of the SPR. And I talked about it this past Sunday with Prepper Now, that, maybe we can pull a lot more out. There's a lot of discussions that if you go below a certain amount, that it will create damage to the infrastructure of these various salt mines that the oil is stored in. But maybe they're going to just go as low as they can possibly go, regardless of the damage, and then figure it out later, come up with another system to have an SPR. Maybe that's the case. But the bottom line is there's still not enough oil globally to bring prices down. And there certainly doesn't seem to be any solution to what's going on between the United States and Iran. So, this is what I'm watching right now, and we're heading into fall and winter, and those diesel and heating oil prices are going to be impacted. The demand's going to go up. It's going to be really costly. If somebody uses heating oil right now, I would suggest, even though prices are up, go ahead and get what you can now, because they may go further. The demand is not going to go down. It's going to go up. So, is it possible prices could come down? They could. The situation in the Middle East could improve. I don't see it anytime soon, but you never know. So, from a preparedness perspective, like I said, I would stock up on, if you use diesel, if you use that for heating your home and stuff, I would go ahead and get that now. And, I've said it before, look at everything that you buy on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. And if you've got the resources and you can go ahead and buy some now and put it back, it's probably going to be only more expensive later. I just said probably. It's most definitely going to be more expensive later. Prices are not going to come down. They're never going to come down to what they were, 2 years ago or 5 years ago. They're only going to keep going up. It's just the question is how much. So, the next time you go into a gas station, even if you don't use diesel, look and see what the price is and compare that to what you're paying for regular gas, because that price is impacting you whether you realized it or not. So, diesel is what keeps America moving, and it's really, really important. And that's something that, I just really wanted to send that message today and talk a little bit about this. So, what do you think? Comment below. What are your thoughts on all this? Where do you think it's going to go? Are you doing anything to mitigate these price increases and the risk of continued inflation? I'd love for you to share. Great community going on here. And I appreciate you guys stopping by. So that's it. You guys stay safe. Take care. We'll see you in the next one.
So I ran from the cities and the noise and lies, found a piece of ground under open skies, hands in the dirt, sweat on my shirt, learning what living's really worth, while crooked men shake hands in rooms, selling souls. life out here's my modern exodus. I traded screens for a sunrise, callous palms, blisters, pride, planted seeds where hope was.